Hello, and we're back with more Krita lessons. So, this is our third lesson, which is Krita Image Manipulation. This will be some more standard Photoshoppy things. This is going to be what we are working on, which is going to be Chuck Norris and Hitmonlee duking it out. And while we do, we're going to talk about a few of the tools that we end up using. Those tools will be layers. They will be layer masks and some filters and the transform tool. So let's get started. I'm going to hit Control N and create a new file. I'm making mine a width of 1600 and a height of 1200, and that's pixels. So that's individual dots, not inches. And hit Create. This is my new file. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to open up the folder that we have for Krita, and you should find these files in your documentation. And we're just going to bring in what we need. I found some Pokemon, and so I'm going to just take the file and I'm going to drag it into Krita right there. It says copy, and wait for that to open. There we go. So we have that file. Let's go and search. We'll just get all of our files together. Let's go back to our blank file, unnamed, and we're going to go into the video game backgrounds folder, and let's just grab a waterfall and put it in, and we're going to say insert as a new layer. Now whenever we insert a layer, we want to name it as it comes in. Right now it is named waterfall, which is good. It's waterfall.gif. I'm going to just double click. I'm just going to call it waterfall background. So let's talk a little bit about layers now that we have a layer. In layers, from top to bottom, we have layer modes. These modes tell how the layer affects the layers underneath it. Right now, we're just going to keep it just normal. We also have opacity. Opacity is how transparent. So you have opacity at 100% and transparency at 0%. And this way we can tell how much our image is being shown. I'm going to keep the opacity at 100%. Under here we have the eyeball, which can hide or show the image, but that's not opacity, that's just turning the layer on or off without affecting the layer. If we hover over it, it'll give us an image with some information. Locking, which is right here, if we click that, you can see it makes a lock. That means that I can no longer paint. It'll give me a big nope. Nope, 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 nope. And I can't do anything. I can't do free transform. I'm just stuck. And the reason why you want to have the layer locked is so that when you're working on very complex scenes, you don't actually accidentally paint on something that you don't want to paint on. Moving on. We have layer effects, turning all the effects on or off. We're not going to worry about that too much right now, perhaps in another class. And then transparency lock. Now what transparency lock says is it says you can paint on this layer. So if I have transparency layer off, I can paint on this layer. But if I turn transparency on, and I try to paint on this layer, you can only paint on the areas that have already been painted on. we might use that later. So I'm going to turn that off for now. So we've got our layers. If we want to do a new blank layer, we just come down here. Paint layer and transparency mask are what we're going to be using mostly right now. And you can also clone or duplicate your layers right here by pressing that. Press that and it copied the waterfall. Press the trash can and that deletes the layer or the mask. Okay, so we have our waterfall. I want to scale this up a bit. So I'm going to hit Control and T. That's going to bring up my transform tool. We talked about the transform tool earlier. I'm going to grab this corner and I'm going to scale it up. I don't want it to fully distort, so I can hit Shift and it won't distort at all. Or I can actually make it a little bit taller. And there we go. So there's our background. Now, let's find some fighters. And go into the movie stars Krita folder. And we've got Bieber, Grumpy Cat, Shark Horse, and all sorts of other famous personalities. Bruce Lee. We're going to bring in Chuck Norris. And we are going to drag him into our folder. And it's going to ask us, do we want to insert this Chuck Norris into the scene, or do we want to open it in a new document? And right now we're going to just say open in a new document. We can insert it into the scene, but I kind of want to just mess with it a little bit beforehand. So we're going to open it as a new document. There we go. So we've got Chuck Norris, we've got Pokemon. Pokemon love to battle. Let's find a good match for Chuck Norris. Let's see if we can find anything. So I used for the example earlier, because it just seemed to fit just right, Hitmonlee. But you guys can use whatever you want for this project. Pick your favorite Pokemon if you have one. I need to look for Hitmonlee. I can't find him. There he is. Okay, so we've got all these Pokemon. They've got a white background on them, and we want that to be transparent. If we turn off this layer, we'll see there's transparency behind it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this tool right here. Contiguous selection tool. It looks like a magic wand or a dandelion. It's a magic wand. It'll give us a magic wand. Let's look at the tool options. And here it says anti-aliasing. This means when you go over an area that's rough, do you want me to smooth it out? Do you want to choose a certain color? Right now, if I were to click here, it would select the blue from that guy, and it would stop at the yellow, and then stop at all the lines, and that'd be it. And if I press red, it would deselect the blue and select the red. If we wanted to add, you could select the blue, and it would add it to the red. Select the yellow, and it would add it to both of those. If you want to deselect everything, it is Control Shift A. It's a little hard to remember, but just remember Control A selects the whole scene. Control Shift A deselects it. You can grow and shrink a selection. So if I said grow this selection by 5 pixels, and then I clicked on this blue, it would measure out 5 pixels from the edge of that blue. Control-Shift-A to deselect. I'm going to turn that 5 down to 0 and hit enter. Now let's get rid of this white. So we're going to select all this white. Now we see what I call little dancing ants around everything. That means all the white is selected. I'm going to press delete. And the delete key will clear all of that. All right? Now I want to make a new selection. So let's first deselect what we have by going Control-Shift-A, because it's good for practice. And we're going to go to the regular selection key. And the regular selection key, its hotkey is Control-R. So the regular selection key, and what this does is it just makes a selection with a box. So we're going to drag a box around Hitmonlee, and we want to copy him. So Control-C. We've copied him. Now let's move to our scene. Control-V. Ah, there he is. He is very cute. He is not going to be very much of an opponent for Chuck Norris because we can barely see him. Whoa. By the way, I apologize, folks. The computer is having a little bit of a hard time recording. So we need to take this guy and make him a little bit bigger. We'll hit Control-T, just like with the background, and let's scale it up. But because I don't want to warp him, I'm going to hold down Shift. It's going to make sure he warps in scale. Gotta wait for my computer to catch up. And let go. By the way, if you don't like something, just Control-Z or Escape to get out of it. Scale him up. Hold Shift to make sure he scales well, and then hit Enter. Now, when we hit Enter, we're gonna see, yeah, this is pretty cool. He's in there, but he's a little bit blurry, and I don't like that. He's a game sprite, so he's supposed to be made of a bunch of pixels, but we don't want him to be that blurry. We're gonna undo, and let's look down at the tool options. Here is called Filter, and this tells the computer what do I do when I have 2 pixels taking up 1 pixel space. Do I go with 1 pixel or the other? Do I average them out, or do I just choose one? These all have different benefits, but box is the simple one. It's also very fast. And all it does is it just duplicates, it basically doesn't filter things. So it makes everything sharp. So now we're going to go to Control-T again, touch our little guy, and hold Shift. It looks blurry right now, but we're not going to worry about that. Bring it up, and press Enter. And there we go. He is looking good. Want to make him a little bit taller? We can, and because we have box, he's not going to be blurry. Okay, now let's go to Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is going to be a little bit more challenging, and the reason is because when we look closely at the background, you can see that it's really, really pixelated here, and it's pretty messy. Whereas with the Pokemon, they're very sharp. So we're going to use a few tools. We can use our magic wand and select some of the blue. You see that's getting kind of sharp, but it's missing some parts. So we're going to hold Shift, select that, and we're just going to select all the parts that are missing. Now, if there's a part that you want to get rid of, like let's say you wanted to keep this shadow, we can hold Alt, or we would just go into subtract and we would subtract it. And it subtracts it. But I'm not going to worry about that. Hold Shift, and Shift is going to add new selections to the old selections. Now let's just take what we have selected here, and we don't know, we might have some spots that are still hiding, so we want to be a little careful. We're going to make this a mask. Now first we've got to invert this selection. To do that, we can go into Select and hit Invert Selection, or on our keyboard we can say Control-Shift-I. Now Chuck Norris is selected and the background isn't. We're going to create a new layer, but a specific type of layer. This layer is called a layer transparency mask. There we go. Now that we have the mask on, we can deselect everything. Control-Shift-A to deselect. Now this got a lot of the blue, but it's actually pretty ugly. But the cool thing is we're using a mask. So what is a mask? Well, a mask is something that, let's see. If I want to hide, this is my sketchbook. If I want to hide something or make a shape, like let's say I want to spray paint this green, but I wanted to preserve a little bit of this texture, I could take another shape, mask over the top, and then spray paint. And when I took this off, it would be green, but it would have a piece that was still preserved. So that is exactly what a mask is. It works in black and white with computers. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be painting. And with any brush that I want, I can come in and paint on my mask. I'll paint black to make things transparent. I'm going to make my brush bigger. I can go through and clean all that extra blue off that looks so gross. I'm going to hit the plus and minus to zoom in. Oh, I accidentally made a boo-boo. I accidentally deleted part of his thing, but that's okay, because I can simply hit X and start drawing with the white. X goes between foreground and background. So if I have my background, it's black, and then when I paint, it takes things away. I hit X again, it's foreground, and it adds things. So we can add that back in there. Hit X. I'm going to make my brush smaller so I have more control. I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to take away some of that blue. Here in the hand, make it even smaller. Make sure there is no blue. And all I'm doing is I'm hitting X when I go in too far, and I'm working the other way out. spacebar brings up the move tool, so I can move around. Cut in here. And again, if I accidentally go in, whoa, too far, so press X, that changes to white, and then I can paint back in the image. Make your brush really small and use it really lightly to get into small cracks. Spacebar, I just move down again. So this is the process that you will end up using a lot. And the reason why masks are so awesome is because they can help preserve your work from accidents. And sometimes you may need to get a shape, and so you'll have to dig in a little bit deep like that. Hit X, go one way over, and then go another way over it to get your corners. Okay, let's zoom out. I did Control 0 just to bring it to 100% because I wanted to look at it. Now I see some stuff happening down by the foot. Now this looks pretty good, but I know I've missed some things. And I know I've missed some things just because of experience. You always miss things. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new layer. It's going to be a paint layer. I'm going to press F for fill, and we're going to paint it a really bright and ugly color that's easy to see. Ooh. Under the tool options, it was actually filling, but it's keeping in mind the layers behind it. I'm going to say limit to current layer. I'm just going to fill that. Now it's pink. Hit brush again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this layer. I'm going to double click it or press enter. And I'm going to call this fill test. I'm going to grab it and I'm going to drag it below so that it's below everything. Okay, so it looks pretty good. I'm going to go into my transparency mask. And I'm going to draw a little bit. Oh, hit X. It's the wrong way. Now you see right now it's kind of stuck. That's because I accidentally picked up a lighter value. So if I go back and I bring this back down to pure black, then it'll knock it completely out. Now, it's still kind of hard to see if I've made mistakes. So let's go into this fill test again, and we're going to do a filter. Up here is filters, and that changes how a whole layer looks. We are going to do adjust and hue, saturation, and brightness, which is also Control U on your keyboard. Now from here, I can change the hue, and it shifts it around, and I can look and see what he looks like in every color range. So it looks pretty good in the bright colors. Now let's just move it down, turn saturation all the way down, and turn brightness all the way down, or close. And now I'm starting to see things. Let's hit OK. Now I'm going to see that this doesn't look that good at all. There's a bunch of stuff hanging out around his head. So let's go back into the transparency mask. And we're going to start brushing. Get a bit of a bigger brush and start brushing those little accidents away. Cut a little bit too much into his cheek, so I press X and come back the other way. Now we have kind of like a blue halo. We can either cut into that or we can edit it by painting. So I'm going to cut into it a little bit, but I think what's even easier is going into the paint layer file itself. So we're going to go back up to the color layer, layer 1, and now we're going to color it black. And let's use something a little bit softer. Now we are painting. That's going to be too big. I'm using an airbrush and I'm just going to paint some black on. And I'm just spray painting black. And it's darkening that up. And all this should be pretty black. There. Now, I think that's clean enough. So now let's apply, let's take this transparency mask. Come on. I'm going to just sharpen it just a little bit right around the foot. I don't want it to be bumpy. Right in that corner. Okay. Now let's right click on layer 1. And let's just say flatten the layer. And what that's going to do is that's going to combine the transparency mask with the layer. And now Chuck Norris is ready to fight. So let's take a square, draw the square around him, Control C to copy him. We're going to go into our other file, Control V to paste him, and then Control T to transform him. All right, this is looking pretty sweet. He's there. Hitmonchan. Let's get into some better practices with our file. Let's name our layers. Right now we can clearly see what the layers are, but sometimes you'll have so many layers it's really hard to work with. So I'm going to double click Hitmonlee. No, that's actually Chuck Norris. Call him Chuck. Click that. Hitmonlee. And we have waterfall background. Great. Now we just need a few more elements. Let's take Chuck Norris and Hitmonlee. And let's right click and say duplicate layer or mask. Now that makes a copy of both of them. We'll right click again and say merge with layer below. And that combines them. Now, why do we want to duplicate this? Because I wanted to keep their same shape. And I'll show you why. Remember the hue saturation option? Control U. Let's bring that up again and turn that lightness all the way down. We're going to make them black. Completely black. Hit OK. And now, Control T again for transform. But this time we're going to do something different with the transform. We're going to bring this centerpiece. This tells where the transform transforms from. So we're going to bring that all the way down to their feet right there. And as you've seen in previous videos, when we hold Control and rotate off of the box, we can swivel this. And I'm just going to rotate this so that it's on the floor. There we go. There we go. Now it's on the floor. Still got a little bit of problems that it's too wide. So I'm going to bring it in here. And we're going to move it right here. I'm looking for the feet to kind of match up. There we go. So now we've got it, but it's covering the others, so we're just going to, we want the shadows to be above the waterfall background and below our two characters. We're just going to click and drag that down. Hitmonlee, want to move him. Now the shadow's not completely black. Like we can even see in here, this isn't black, it's just dark. So let's take this layer, double click, and we'll name it Shadow. We're going to reduce the opacity just so it makes the ground beneath them darker. Okay, almost there, folks. Let's go back into backgrounds. And we've got some hit bars. Let's drag that in. And now we're going to actually just insert this as a new layer. Drum roll, there we go. So now we get to choose which of these we like. I'm going to grab my bounding box, or my selection box, and select this top one, and delete. I don't like that one. select this bottom one, and press the delete key. I don't like that one. Control-Shift-A to deselect everything. And then Control-T. We're just going to drag this there. Like so. Hit bars are behind. Maybe raise them up just a little bit. And last but not least, we have text. Text is a little bit tricky in Krita. We're going to take it, we're going to select the color that we want the text to be. Have white. We're going to draw a box. Artistic text. Oh, indeed it is. We're going to type in Chuck Norris. I'm going to hold Shift and the back key to select it all. And now let's find a good font. I like this font because it looks a little bit more like an old video game. Good. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Backspace, Hitmonlee. Hold down Shift, and let's find that same font, MS Serif. Good. Now if this is too big, and both of these are too big, I'm just going to go to the corner and drag it to the right size we want. Click here and drag it till it's about the same size. And last but not least, we're going to use the crop tool. I'm going to drag from one corner. We're going to just get rid of the part we're not using. Press Enter. And there we go. So, in review, talked about how to create a new file with its resolution and colors. We talked about the layer orders, their modes, and transparencies. We pasted from inside the program. And we've drag and dropped files from outside the program. And so that's pretty much everything to get us this far. Now let's say we wanted to paint on top of this. We could, let's just flatten the image. Root merge. Actually, before we do that, here's one thing about Chuck that he has an advantage over Hitmonlee, and that is his resolution. So let's take our resolution. Let's see how many pixels that is. That's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 pixels. So if we took Chuck, we did a filter on him, and we went pixelize, what that does is it makes you lose a little bit of detail. It makes squares. So right now he's at 10 by 10 pixels. About 7 by 7 pixels. 5 by 5 pixels. Okay, there we go. Now they have a similar resolution. If we want to apply that resolution to the background, Control F. And it does the same thing. There we go. Now it looks like they're all in the same very low resolution video game. Now let's say we want to go one step further. We could actually flatten this and paint on top. So let's just say flatten the image. We like it. It's perfect. It's great. Now we could go over with our brushes. Whoop. Oop, I accidentally hit the brushes out of existence. Toolbar shown. We can always bring back our brushes by showing Dockers. And where are brushes? Brushes preset. Okay, I moved them off the page. That is weird, but a good excuse to show off this bad boy up here. Choose workspace. Now, we had previously customized our workspace, and I had saved it to Scott. So if I click Scott again, that's like a default. So now we're back in Scott. And here's the brush presets. No. Sorry. I apologize. For some reason, brush presets, they're freaking everything out. All right, well, looks like my computer has had it for now. But anyway, we got there. So in review, you can paste things in, put them into layers, adjust the layers, set the layers opacity. You can put filters on the layers. You can put text over the top, and that's how you can get memes and comics and all sorts of funny images. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.